So there we have it. Hopefully it is now recording. Can anybody see that? It is? Yeah, got that word? Okay, excellent. All right, so again, my name is Kim Rankdahl, and I am here supporting the state for secondary school counseling and leading us off this afternoon in our last of 6 GRU office hours with our partners at the State Board of Ed, and super happy to have you here again today. We have the same agenda that we've had for the last 6 weeks, is to basically give you a really quick overview of what the graduation requirement flexibilities and considerations are for this school year. And then we'll open it up to Q&A for whatever time we have left. We would ask that you put your questions in the chat, and we will use that to reference when we get to the Q&A part of the presentation. And then, as always, we ask for your continued patience and grace as we still continue to hear questions from you all that surprise us just a tad bit, and we may need to go back and get some answers for you. So the other thing you will see in the chat that will drop in occasionally is a link to this slide deck. And if you have any trouble opening it up, just let us know. But it's from a shared drive, Google Drive, so hopefully it won't be problematic. And with that, I am going to hand this over to our partners from the State Board of Ed to take it away, because this is their show.
Thank you, Kim. I'm Linda Drake. I'm on the staff of the State Board of Education. And let's see, this slide mainly is to remind you of the 3 parts of the high school diploma: the high school and beyond plan, credit and subject area requirements, and the graduation pathway options. The emergency waiver allows a waiver of the credit and subject area requirements and the graduation pathway options. It does not allow a waiver of the high school and beyond plan. And in fact, the high school and beyond plan should be sort of a guiding document for helping students decide whether or not and which credits to waive, if any. The purpose of the high school and the high school diploma is in statute. And so we hope to create a system of waivers during these hard and challenging times that does continue to respect that purpose of the high school diploma that is in statute. Next slide. All right, so these are the credit and subject area requirements. The 24 credit framework. In yellow are the core requirements, and then in blue are the flexible requirements that include both electives and personalized pathway requirements. And the emergency waiver does allow both types of subject and credit area requirements to be waived under certain circumstances with some limitations. Next slide. And this shows some of the flexibility, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Alyssa Muller, to talk about some of the mastery-based learning flexibilities.
Hi, everybody. So we just wanted to take this opportunity to really highlight the flexibility you have with mastery-based learning. For those of you whose district have adopted a mastery-based crediting policy, we would really encourage you to use this to help your students continue to meet their graduation requirements by demonstrating mastery over particular learning standards and subject areas where appropriate. So if you have questions about that, we have a lot of resources on our mastery-based learning FAQ page, and you're always welcome to reach out to me by email for any mastery-based learning questions.
Thank you, Alyssa. Really appreciate her leading us off with one of the ways in which you could likely provide some additional support and flexibility, not just to your seniors, but also to your other students who are looking for ways to recoup some of the things they may have missed in the last 18 months as we had significant disruptions to our education system. So a few other examples we just wanted to pull up into your conscious mind in case they haven't been swirling around in there yet. And that is the WAC change that happened in January of 2020 to WAC 180.51.115, which is around comparable course content substitutions. This is most often seen utilized by our IEP teams in support of students who receive special services, but it is not limited to that student population by any means. So please think of this as something you could consider in other areas if and when needed. But we wanted you to make sure you were aware that there was a change made in the WAC that waiving course requirements for students with IEPs is no longer an applicable solution. And you need to look for those courses that can be used as substitutions that give that comparable content that is accessible for students based on their IEPs. The other option you see on your screen is Cte Credit Equivalencies. We again continue to try to promote that option as something to think about as another way to offer access to core content in a different way that might meet the unique needs of your students and still count towards those specific credit requirements that they need to take in order to graduate, but still be preparing them maybe for a pathway that's more relative to what they want to pursue. And then we listed a couple other places you could go if you're looking for other out-of-the-box thinking around credit recovery and or flexibility. Both the Learning Alternatives webpage on OSPI's website is a good repository of ideas, as well as a bulletin that we sent out at the end of the summer that had kind of two different ways of viewing your instructional funding models for this school year. One around some changes in the world of alternative learning, and then in basic ed. So wanted to just draw your attention to those resources and make sure you've got access to things that might help. So with that, I'll turn it back to Linda.
So this is just to return to the subject area requirements for a minute. This highlights that some of those credits are also college academic distribution requirements, or the minimum admissions requirements by our public 4 years in Washington. So when you consider which credits might be waived, you might consider prioritizing the CATERs to keep the door open for students that want to attend a 4-year or may want to attend a 4-year degree program after high school. So this year there is a waiver program. It's similar to the waiver program last year. It should be used only as a last resort for students who have whose learning and ability have met credit and graduation pathways requirements, but that have been interrupted and impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. It's in place from the beginning of the year. We do want you to know that it's available. It really should be treated though as a last resort. The emergency waiver is a waiver that is intended to be used to help students graduate in the same year that the waiver is granted. So here at the beginning of the year, you would want to make a plan for the students to actually meet graduation requirements. And then towards the end of the year, or the end of when the student planned to graduate, then you can look and see how successful were they in their attempt, and then consider if it's appropriate to waive any credits to let them graduate. Students receiving special education services, as Kim mentioned, no longer have access to the Certificate of Individual Achievement, so they will need to find a way of meeting that pathway requirement. So the rules adopted by the State Board of Education in July extends through this school year. The question has come up whether there'll be anything next year. The rules include that the State Board of Education will revisit the question of whether anything might be needed for next year. But for now, you know that you have the emergency waiver available this year. It should, as I mentioned, be used as a last resort. And we do ask that districts consider their existing waiver authority before considering the emergency waiver, particularly the 2-credit waiver for individual circumstances. The emergency waiver is for up to 2 credits. Then there's the 2-credit waiver for individual student circumstances. They're kind of different purposes for those 2 waivers. The individual student circumstances could be awarded locally at any time, even before the student attempts credits. So that's something you could consider right now for students that you think might struggle with graduation. But the emergency waiver is to be considered as a last resort. The rules have lots of examples of good faith effort. So that might be something that you might want to check out the rules themselves to see those examples. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, up to 2 credits can be waived. They may be flexible credits or core credits, but no more than 1 credit in any core subject area, and the graduation pathway options may be waived, but the student must earn a total of at least 20 credits. And then there's a note about the existing waiver authority that districts should consider before using the GRU. Student eligibility for the waiver, as I mentioned, they need to have been impacted in their ability to meet graduation requirements by the pandemic. They need to have demonstrated post-secondary preparation. Again, there's lots of examples in the rules themselves of ways that they can do that. One thing that's new since last spring that was carried over into the permanent rules is that students who want to graduate earlier than their cohort, say students in the class of 2023, may use the waiver for the graduation pathway option only. They need to have met all of the credit and subject area requirements for their cohort, and then the graduation pathway option may be considered to be waived under the emergency waiver. Districts are responsible for keeping records and reporting on the waiver. And also you need to keep a record of good faith effort for helping students meet their graduation requirements and how students demonstrated post-secondary preparation. Some of the reporting is for last year is happening right now through the State Board of Education Basic Education Survey. That's open right now. And we're asking questions about students who received the waiver last year or who didn't receive the waiver. A lot of information will be captured in CEDARS about students who got the waiver, but the State Board of Education Basic Education Survey actually asks about students who might have wanted the waiver but didn't get awarded the waiver. So that's why we want to collect that information. And that's all just to sort of help districts ensure that the waiver is being administered equitably. Kim, did you want to?
There's also, my turn? Are you ready for me, Linda? All right. There's also some technical pieces to this, of course, in terms of how all of this gets input into your data systems, be it your transcript or the Grad Pathways database. So wanted to just remind everyone that our transcript guidance, both the FAQ and the user guide, have been updated. These links will take you to those directly. For waived credits, just a reminder that only credits waived through the GRU get the V code on the transcript. If you use the individual student circumstances waiver that Linda mentioned, you don't record that on the transcript, but it is always good practice to be recording that either in the high school and beyond plan and or putting a note within the student's CUME file close to their transcript so that there's no question about how they met their graduation status if you did in fact apply some of the waivers or the other flexibility with PE and Washington State history. So the V code for waiving credits would only happen in the year they graduate because it is supposed to be ascribed to the term in which they use it. And so it indicates that they have had those impacts continue through this school year, and therefore they were waiving credits at the end of this year or at the end of the term by which you intend to graduate them. For the Grad Pathways piece, if the student is graduating and they are using the GRU to waive their grad pathway, then obviously it should say waived, whether it was just part of it, maybe only the math part, or both math and ELA, or they just waived their grad pathway in its entirety. If they have met both parts, if they are doing both a math and an ELA option, or if they've done a CTE sequence or the Asvab, which do not have the math and the ELA component to them separately, then it would just say met. So hopefully that's some clarity. And then I am going to invite Clarice Leong. She is one of our OSPI staff on the call to give a little bit more of her language around how the Grad Pathways database submission will work?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's just going to continue with what we did last year. So when the graduation pathways GRU opens up again in the graduation alternatives application, once the district assessment coordinator or designee enter in that information, then it will be mapped to the pathways database. So you can see all of your information there, pathways, and also the waiver.
Thank you, Clarice. So Lynn is giving you a good overview of kind of the rules and the logistics around the way the State Board of Ed is putting in place their permanent emergency waiver rules for this year. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of the guidance part of this and the determination of whether a student is actually going to need to access a GRU or not this school year. This is the first time, obviously, that we have known this flexibility is going to exist at the start of the school year. And so what I think is really important that we remember, and Linda mentioned this, is that we should not be planning on a GRU at this point. It is actually now back in that space where seniors, whether they are current fourth year seniors, fifth year seniors, sixth year seniors, we should be looking at what can we do to put our good faith effort out there, support them in meeting their state minimum graduation requirements. And then again, if we make that plan with them and they get to the end of whatever term we have ascribed as their graduation timeframe, then we can look at whether or not those continued COVID impacts have necessitated the use of a GRU, either for the grad pathway and or the credits, keeping in mind, of course, that any credits that are waived should be the ones that would be least applicable to preparing them for whatever their grad pathway is that they want to pursue when they leave our system. So really doing that analysis with them, getting serious about what is it you want to do first when you leave high school? What do we need to make sure you take in order to be eligible for that option or prepared for that option, preferably both? And then that's how you can make those determinations of how to set up that plan for them this year. And when we think about accessing grad pathways, we know last year it was pretty rough for our students to be able to access many of what has been put in place since House Bill 1599 in 2019 for grad pathways. So not only did we have this really aspirational bill passed back then we ended up with a global pandemic that made it harder for kids to access those options. So we know it's been a challenge, but we do, of course, without our working crystal ball, hope to see continued access improve this school year and for students to have more opportunity to demonstrate their preparation and their readiness for that post-high school plan. So I want to invite our Director of Assessment Operations at OSPI, Christopher Hansrick, to take a moment and share with you what the plan is for both the fall and the spring testing windows this year, because they're a little bit different and they have some different implications for you. So Christopher, you're on, my friend.
Great, thank you, Kim. Good afternoon, everyone. So for the students who have chosen the state assessment as their pathway, many of you know that the U.S. Department of Ed gave Washington some flexibility last spring in not administering the Smarter Balanced ELA and math test. They allowed us to extend the window into fall and to also to shorten the fall assessments. So for those students who have chosen the assessments as a pathway, this fall is a great opportunity for 11th and 12th graders to sit for the Smarter Balanced ELA and math test. They're shortened quite a bit from what was previously administered, and that was in spring of 2019. These students will have another opportunity, again with Smarter Balanced in the spring, but that will include 10th graders as well. The test in the spring will not be as short as the test in the fall. So again, this is a great opportunity to take the test this fall. The window opened Monday, the 27th, and will remain open through November the 10th. For students who access the WAAIM fall window opened on September 27th and will remain open through November the 23rd. Thank you very much, Kim.
Thank you, Christopher. And I just want to clarify too that the 12th grade ideally is taking the WACAS this fall, correct? Since they missed the WACAS as 11th graders in the spring of 2021, correct?
Correct. That is correct. The WCAS science is available this fall to 12th graders.
But they can request the ELA and math and/or.
Yes.
Okay. And Linda, did you want to use this time right here to talk about the score reporting that we
I'll say a couple.
last time?
I'll say a couple of things because well, first of all, there was some confusion about whether or not this fall test can be used as a pathway, and I think the message there is yes, absolutely, it can be used as the pathway. So the other thing is that the state board and OSPI work very hard to be on the same page. Sometimes we're not quite as successful as other times, but we've been communicating back and forth about the test and the test score. And at this point, both OSPI and State Board of Education staff are recommending or recognize that the fall test is the same or similar enough to the SBEC that the scores will not change, or at least from the perspective of the field. I think you can count on the scores for the level scores, and the graduation scores will be the same for the fall test as in the past.
Thank you, Linda, for clarifying that. And I just want to thank the field, those of you who were on the call with us last week, for your grace and patience as we tried to make sure we all were on the same page with knowing that those scores are going to be the same. This is essentially a fall administration of what would have happened last spring. So to Danielle's question in the chat, the 9th graders are actually taking the 8th grade test from last time. So it doesn't count as grad pathway. It doesn't count as their 10th grade ELA assessment or math assessment. It's essentially a postponement of what they would have taken in 8th grade. And again, just reminding the field, as we think about the SBA being a shorter version of what's normal, and an opportunity really for us to get that first kind of dipstick moment in time measurement as a state of how our students are doing in the areas of ELA, math, and science, coming off of what has been a significant disruption in their education. So as much as we know that students may feel anxious about these assessments, feeling unprepared, whatever we can do to remind them this is just for us to get an idea of where we're at and to give our educators a chance to know, even if it's a smaller version, at least kind of where we're at as a state with these subject areas. So really trying to encourage everybody to get the students to do the best that they can with them, knowing that this is giving us our first look at where we're at. And then of course, with the other assessment and course-based graduation pathways that you see on the screen, again, hoping and assuming that we will continue to see more and more of those options be available, but also wanting to acknowledge when we had our Wisher Fall workshops for the Washington Council this month, earlier in this month, the higher ed system was really clear. They have all gone essentially either test blind or test optional for their college admissions exams. So the ACT and SAT, which are some of the options that students can use to demonstrate their preparation for those pathways, they may not be required for college admissions. Doesn't mean it isn't still an opportunity for students to see again where they're at with those skills and where they are in reference to their admissions process, and whether or not they want to use that as a grad pathway is kind of their choice based on what their goals are for after high school. So just want to point those things out. The other thing I would say with the Asvab, we've had some questions over the first 6 weeks of this around using the Asvab as a grad pathway, and just want to remind everyone, there is a lot more use of that assessment happening as sort of a career exploration opportunity for students, which we think is fantastic. I know a fair number of schools are using it in the 10th grade because that 8th grade assessment that we give students for their first look at what is a career that might match me, that has to happen by 8th grade. A lot changes between middle school and 10th grade for our youth. And so it's been a great second opportunity for students to get that career exploration and access to those resources through Asvab and through our military. But again, as far as using that as a graduation pathway, we should be seeing that as a pathway for students who are either headed into the military or wanting to look at career opportunities that can be prepared for through some sort of military preparation or something similar. So there was a significant amount of concern when House Bill 1599 was being debated and passed in the legislature in 2019, that we wouldn't see schools just resorting to that as a last resort for grad pathway, in a sense, because it's free and typically an accessible exam, although it hasn't been as much so recently. So I just want to put those things out there as food for thought as we continue to look in this next school year and moving forward at how are we really trying to get access to our seniors and our students to those grad pathways and keep building those opportunities once we're hopefully back to a little bit more sense of normal. And so when we talk, and Linda mentioned this idea about confirming that a student is prepared and ready to go on to whatever post-high school goal that they have, when you're thinking about whether or not accessing a GRU is appropriate for a given student, around the edge of the blocks in the center of your screen are many of the options that the state board has put in their rules as possibilities that you could use to show that they have demonstrated their preparation. Many of them will look very similar from what used to be in place when we had alternatives to the assessment and the expedited assessment appeal waiver. That is now gone. That is history, except for the classes of 2019 and earlier. So we want to make sure that we are continuing to look for those ways to meet flexibly as much as we can the needs of our students, have them demonstrate their preparation and readiness, and really have those conversations with students who are at all in this space of needing to consider, you know, some flexibility to get them graduated. Are we sure that we, you know, can help them figure out what they want to do? What are their interests, passions, skills, dreams for their future, et cetera? How do we line them up with not only what they can finish out in our system, but the transition services they need to get to that next step as well. So just thinking about that from the standpoint, again, of trying to determine as we get through this school year and closer to spring, whether or not this senior, any given senior, is going to actually need to access a GRU, or can we connect them to anything that will help prepare them further. And so when it comes to some of the documentation pieces that Linda mentioned, there is district level data that we are looking at, but there's also you at a building level who might want to make sure you've got some documentation of what's been happening with a given senior so that you can keep track of it, for one, because we know it can be a little overwhelming and confusing to track all these things, but also just so that you have something to put in their CUME file with that final transcript that makes it really clear what was the flexibility the student accessed in order to graduate. So if they only have 21 or 20 credits, there aren't any questions about, well, how did this student get graduated? You've got that documentation really clearly in front of you. So I want to thank again the Olympia School District. We worked with them to develop a template that they use in their district to document what is being done for a given student in accessing a GRU, and they have graciously agreed that we can share that out with you all of you, excuse me, if you don't already have something developed for your own district. This is here for you. It's in a Word doc, so you can adjust it as needed, add your own school logo in there if you want to, and make it fit what your opportunities are in your school. So thank you again to Olympia School District for that partnership. And then I'm going to hand this back to our State Board of Ed friends for a couple more pieces of information related to this topic.
Thanks, Kim. So those of you who have been on before have heard my pitch, but the Mastery-Based Learning Work Group is in the process of developing a profile of a graduate to help everybody in our state understand the multidisciplinary skills that our students should acquire by the time they graduate. Things like being critical thinkers, being adaptable. And so then the state board has been charged by the legislature to use the profile of a graduate to submit a report back to the legislature by next December that includes recommendations on how to align graduation requirements to the profile. So that's part of why we thought you all would be interested. So for those of you who have taken the survey already, thank you very much. Those of you who haven't, we are planning to close the survey at the end of this week. So please feel free to take it if you'd still like to. And particularly, we hope that you would also share it with your students and their families. So thank you very much. We value your feedback. All right, and we just wanted to link to a couple of additional resources. You can find all of these things on our State Board of Education website, and I believe the PowerPoint has been put in chat several times, so you can have those direct links.
Thanks, Alyssa. And then this normally was our slide letting you know when the next GRU office hours were, but we are officially done with this series. So want you to know that we have been recording this if you came in late and didn't hear that warning on the front end. So we will be taking some time to edit it out, maybe some of the ums and the ands and the oopses, and also captioning for you what we have been saying so that it is accessible across multiple folks' needs. And just wanted to thank the Derek Tucci's and other folks of the world who have been showing up to these faithfully, even starting as early as last spring when we did this for the first time. We've done 12 of them now total. And so we don't have an award for you, Derek, but do want to just say you are super cool because you're a Coug and you are persistently here. So we appreciate you. Got Clarice on that one. So thank you very much. We really have enjoyed having this opportunity to connect with you directly, to hear your questions, to try to problem solve with you together. It's helped us a lot as state agencies to know better how we can serve you. And I hope it's been as helpful and enjoyable for you to hear the same spiel 6 weeks in a row, but also to be able to hear the questions of your peers and your colleagues as well, and how we're able to try to come together to answer them. So with that, that is the end of our spiel. And we want to open it up to the Q&A, which I know some folks have been trying to answer some things as we go. So if anybody is clear, since I've been doing the talking, on where we need to go back and start with questions that maybe haven't been answered or reiterate them, I'm just looking for that now. So it looks like Dawn knows the districts have State Board of Ed authority. If you've granted it last year, you've got it again this year. You don't have to reapply. Don't have to redo your resolution. You're good to go. We talked with Danielle about 9th graders are doing the 8th grade test. So
all the way to the bottom, Kim, to Hannah.
okay, because I didn't see a response yet to charities, unless okay.
Oh, wait.
Well, some of these we might want to say out loud. I don't know how good people are at reading the chat. So, so knowing that there are some continued spaces that we are acknowledging openly for additional opportunities to build grad pathways, the State Board of Ed has been incredibly diligent in surveying communities, staff, schools about what are some other ways we might look for building some other pathways that can meet needs. So charity, definitely still expecting that to come. Not sure if it'll be this session or the session after, but Linda, can you remind the field, when is your full report due to the legislature for consideration? I know you've been given them interim reports.
Yes, the final report is due in December 2022. So we are continuing another year of doing research on graduation pathway options. I did respond to Charity, but unfortunately I can't see very well.
Oh, is that the Christy?
To Christy, I'm
Okay.
sorry, I apologize to Charity.
Okay.
But the House Bill 1162 is still alive, so it's possible that there would be action on that this legislative session. But as Kim mentioned, the State Board is still very interested in researching graduation pathway options and advocating for additional graduation pathway options. We've heard folks say that an arts pathway would be great. And we've also heard very strongly that a work-based pathway would be a good option. So those are the things we're looking into.
Thank you, Linda. And Clarice, I see you answered Kim's question as far as the Running Start courses being over 100 level. We've had staff reach out, asking about equivalencies that can be created with under 100 level courses at a college. That's a local decision for a high school to make to see if the curriculum line up to be able to offer high school credit for a lower than 100 level class. But it should not be coded in your system as Running Start if it isn't 100 level or higher. So I would encourage you to go back and talk with your data manager or whoever's running your SIS and make sure that those codings are being done correctly in your system so that only those 100 level or above are actually showing as Running Start and dual credit with the correct designator on the transcript to show that dual credit. And then did you answer Charity's question, Clarice, about the Asvab?
Yeah.
You did. Okay, thank you. I'm still scrolling, y'all. It's there it is. Okay, I appreciate your patience. So Hannah, hi Hannah. I'm just taking a second to glance at your comment.
And I think your point here, Hannah, is very well taken. And it's something that I think the state board really knows and appreciates. Basically, the rules that say that we want districts to look at the data and help ensure equitable administration is that we want districts to do their due diligence to make sure that it's as equitable as possible. But we aren't expecting to see perfect equity in the data because we know that the COVID pandemic impacted different groups of kids differently. So we don't expect to see equity in the data, but we do expect that districts will do their best.
Okay. So it looks like the last one's there for you, Clarice, if you want to jump in on explaining more about how CTE sequences are approved for Grad Pathways.
Yeah, we could have a whole office hour, I think, on the CTE graduation pathway. Because in case nobody speaks CTE, which I think is a world language into itself. So the CTE graduation pathway, there's really sort of two versions of it. The initial one that doesn't require any sort of approval is if a student has earned 2 credits of CTE courses that fall into the same CTE program area. See, I'm going off the rails right now. And the program areas are like skilled and technical sciences, family consumer sciences, health sciences. And if one of the courses of the 2 credits have a dual credit designation or had led to an industry recognized credential or is a Core Plus program, then if a student successfully earned the 2 credits in the same program area with one of those designations, they have met the CTE graduation pathway. Now, the other version that is specific to the district and specific to schools are that a district would need to submit what we call a local CTE graduation pathway. Basically, it fits that same criteria, except it's not in the same program area. So it could be something that you're seeing locally, like students are working towards a specific job or opportunity where they have 1 credit in health sciences, another credit in STEM, right? But it's leading towards a particular opportunity, leading towards a particular field, maybe it's a regional field. And so it's really specific to that. That's when you would need the district and most importantly, the CTE director and the district assessment coordinator would have to then submit it for OSPI review. And if it is approved statewide. So the thing about it is that we don't take reviewing the local CTE submissions lightly because it is approved across the state. So what your district, instead of submitting a new local CTE graduation pathway, you should probably check out what's already there. And if your district is approved for those zip codes that are listed, then I would say adopt a previously approved one versus creating your own. The trick about it that some districts don't read the fine print is you got to be approved for those zip codes, right? So you can't say, oh, but it's a digit off. Yeah, not happening. So I think if you have questions about this, feel free to reach out to me. I'll drop my email in there. It is really nuanced, and this is where data gets super complicated as well. But you may want to have a conversation about this with your CTE director. That may shore up a lot of holes and gaps of information.
Thank you, Clarice. And I just added to the chat for the second and the third in terms of a request around a CTE pathway webinar. We'll also pass that request along to Renee Lafrenrier. She is our OSPI staffer who supports the CTE pathways specifically, and we can certainly see what we can do to provide some additional support there.
Yeah, but if it comes really down to why is the student not showing MET in the Pathways database, probably best for me. So you can email the Graduation Pathways email. And while I have the mic off, mute, I'm gonna address Hua. Hua's question is much like Charity's question about like what happened to the Asvab upload in the graduation alternatives application. Surprise, we warned you, we got rid of it. So now reporting Asvab scores only happen in CEDARS and they can't be uploaded. Sorry, Hua, it's gonna have to go old school with this, but it's uploaded only through CEDARS. If you look at the CEDARS reporting manual, I believe, it's on page 29.
Okay. Okay, we have still 18 minutes left. If anyone has other questions, I think we have exhausted what has been in the chat so far. So you can either plop something in the chat, or if you want to unmute, we don't have a mad rush at the moment. So if you want to just ask your question, we can certainly try to hit those one at a time as well.
And I wanted to thank you, Kim, for answering Hannah's questions. I didn't, after reading the long comment, I didn't get that question. So yes, students in the class of 20, 21, and 22 have access to this waiver.
Mm-hmm.
And then kids in later cohorts who are graduating early this year have access to waiving the graduation pathway option. And the state board will revisit whether there's the need for another waiver next year.
Thanks, Linda. And I would just add to that, you know, we've had a lot of discussion in these office hours over the last few weeks around 5th year and 6th year students in particular, and how do we keep them motivated? How do we keep them moving forward when essentially it's a little bit of a restart for them coming into a new school year if they didn't access that GRU by August 31st of the year before and actually meet their graduation requirements. And we've tried to just be as empathetic and compassionate and understanding as we can be, and knowing that those are hard conversations with those seniors, especially if they are anxious to move on out of high school and do something else. But ultimately, the way the GRU is established and an emergency waiver is really around how do we make sure that if a senior has done everything they can to meet their graduation requirements, the school has put in every effort, of course, to support them in that, and they still don't make it within that planned time frame during which they should be graduating, and they are able to demonstrate their preparation and readiness to go to that next step, that's where it becomes a way to give them that boost out the door. And I know it's really hard when they were only half a credit off in August, and now they come back and essentially they're being held to the state minimum requirements again, which is 22 credits. You can still use your 2 credit of flexible waiver. You can still use your physical education and your Washington State history flexibility. You still, of course, have the authority to waive other local requirements, whether it's more credits, community service, senior projects, things like that, that typically have been a graduation requirement in your district. All of those things are still within the realm of possibility to plan now and say, we're going to do these starting now. The GRU is the only part that really needs to be a backwards look at. You still had continued impacts from COVID this year. We still see that preparation and that readiness to go. You're eligible or ready for whatever it is you want to do next. And we can get this done by August 31st of 2022 and get you on your way. So I just want to give my heart out to those of you who are having those really hard conversations with your seniors and your families, having done it many, many times myself. I know it's not easy. We're here to help you and support you. If you've got individual cases you need help with, please reach out to us and we can problem solve together. We can brainstorm with you. We can offer whatever resources and support we have. But just want to be really mindful that we know that that's a tough thing to keep those seniors focused and moving forward and accessing that free education they can still make use of while they're still here with us in some way. So this topic seemed to have started a new slew of some questions and comments. So I'm going back up to where Clarice left off with her email, and I see students in the class of 2019, can they still use the waivers that were approved for their graduating class?
We got those answered.
You did already? Gosh,
Yep.
could you be a little bit more overachieving, please? Yes, so that's the expedited assessment appeal and the other flexibility waivers we had prior to graduation pathways. So just to be clear. Okay. You got it, Clarice, you're on it. Thank you. All right, so Kim, I see your question around, we talk a lot of flexibility and grad requirements as long as it is in the high school and beyond plan. Where should this plan be? Is there a template? We use Zello, but I am not sure that info is kept the same way as grad records. So it's a great question, Kim. We have a variety of platforms that are used across the state for that online accessibility to a high school and beyond plan. And Zello and other vendors have done a really intentional job of trying to align their platforms as much as they can with our state level requirements, because of course, keep in mind, many of them are national products. And so they do their best by us to make sure students can access the bulk of what we require in the state of Washington. With that being said, OSPI does produce a high school and beyond plan template that is a writable, uploadable document. It is usually, now that we've transitioned to online, more often than not, a page of it or a couple pages of it are pulled out and just uploaded as a document into those high school and beyond plan online platforms as a supplement to what that platform can offer, because they're, again, their own products and have different bells and whistles that are accessible depending on which vendor you are using. So what I would encourage you to do is to take a look at the high school and beyond plan template that we offer. And I will also put in the chat a link to our graduation pathways toolkit. That is sort of our one-stop shop at OSPI anyway, of all things graduation related in terms of requirements, what they look like, how we meet them, basically where you can go to get all the different pieces about what is the high school and beyond plan supposed to exist as, what are all the component parts, and then match that with what is Zello providing, where are there gaps that maybe need to be addressed, either pulling a page or two out of our template or building something in-house that works better for you if you don't like what OSPI has produced. So I'll put those links in the chat and would just ask that maybe Alyssa or Linda take the next question if possible, so I can do that. If there are any.
I'm looking and it appears to me that most of the questions in chat have been answered in chat. So I think we're all caught up.
Okay.
If we missed any, please unmute and ask away.
Oh, and Alexandra already posted the template. Thank you, Alexandra. I very much appreciate that. And Jared's question. Yeah, okay. I also would point out to you, Alexandra also put a link in the chat to a exemplar case study that we created in collaboration across a couple different divisions and with the State Board of Ed for a high school and beyond plan that would be aligned with an IEP transition plan, which is a requirement for the high school and beyond plan and for our students who have IEPs. And we created an exemplar of a student with disabilities who is highly CTE focused and is actually building 2 CTE pathways into their schedule and what that looks like. So wanted to shout out to Alexandra and her team and all of the folks who were involved in creating those exemplars. They've been really nice visuals for folks to be able to see and actually stemmed from actual work that's happening in districts in the state of Washington that we piggybacked on to develop those within our template for you. So I hope those are helpful. And then Alexander, if I could ask you for one last favor, if you wouldn't mind putting the link to the graduation webpage in the chat so that we can access the graduation pathways toolkit. Anytime I try to do that, it messes up my screen. So
On
you
it.
wouldn't mind. Thank you. All right. Anything else? We still have 9 minutes, but have no problems at all if you want to take off and actually get a bite to eat or have a quick bio break before your next class or whatever you may have going on. So please know you are welcome to head out whenever you need to, but we are still here for questions if you have any. Now I'm going to go ahead. We'll stop the share. Good to see a few faces that way, at least. There's Derek. I hope you heard your shout out.
Yes, I did. I mean, what people don't realize is that every time I show up to this, you pick up a little something every time. So, you know, if you didn't go to this one, we did hear Clarice talk about the Cte pathways a little bit more. And, you know, but each time there's, you know, the Asvab, for instance, that was one that came up that was different than the other ones. So that's why I pop into all these, because, you know, I got to know from my district. So thank y'all for what y'all do. Appreciate it.
I thought you were gonna say like you pick up a bad habit or like a tick or something.
For those of you that come just for Clarice's humor, I don't blame you at all because she always gives us a good laugh at some point.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Well, y'all have a great day. Thank you for the shout out. That was really nice.
You betcha. If anyone else has any questions, I see Ms. Quinn, you have actually shown your face. Did you want to ask a question or are you just saying hi? Just saying hi. All right. Well, again, we will be posting this video after it has been edited and captioned so that in case you have colleagues who were unable to make any of these office hours, you are welcome to send them the link to watch this one. And we will continue as always to provide you support whenever you want to reach out and ask us questions or ask for some help. So please know we are here. And I wanted to also thank Christopher, Clarice, Alexander, Tony from our Special Services Department, Lisa Ireland, who has been attending many of these from our Student Information System. She's our transcript queen. She couldn't be here today, but really appreciate the dedication of both Alyssa and Linda from the State Board and our OSPI team in making this a priority each week to be here and to be here with you all. And really to thank you guys, because ultimately we are here to serve you, and interacting with you like this has given us a lot better idea of what your needs are and how we can be more supportive. So we wouldn't be here without you. So thank you for giving us this chance to learn from you as well.
Hey, Kim, I know it doesn't always apply to the bulk majority, but I'm working with our Open Doors program. And I think one of the questions that I think we're trying to really navigate around is the timing of the waivers. You know, we've got a pretty idea of which waivers can be used, but for Open Doors, especially a lot of our 5th and 6th years, are we waiting until the semester or end year, or for within that program with our kids? You know, if we have you know, are we able to do, you know, the November graduation with them? Is that, I think that's the really question with our Open Doors kids, is the timing of when to apply these waivers.
So thank you for bringing up that question, because it hadn't come up yet today, and we've addressed that a couple times. But I'll take the first go at this, and then Clarice or Linda, if you want to jump in with the details. So the system in terms of uploading your information into the graduational database, that may not be open at the moment. That doesn't mean you can't go through your process on your end. And if you have made a plan with that senior to graduate at the end of first trimester, or maybe it's first quarter if they're in open doors and they're in college program, and the student gets to the end of that and that was your plan and it wasn't done, the State Board of Ed has been very gracious in saying, you made that plan, that's where the flexibility can be applied. And so the system may not be open for you to upload that until February, but you can go through the process on your end. And I would look to Linda, Alyssa, or Clarice to add any other details to that.
No, I think you covered it. As long as it was part of the plan and you're considering the waiver towards the end of when you planned with the student that the student would be graduating.
That's perfect. Do you, I guess I'm trying to think out, because we do have, I think, I don't know, somewhere between 5 and 10 kids that they are, part of their plan, they're on track to be graduated after the first quarter. Do you know, or do you know if there's something in the works where I'm thinking, so if the waiver isn't able to be processed on the state side of the system until February, that gap time between the two where this student is officially but not officially graduated, and whether or not that graduation component is needed for the next phase of their life during that that potential 2 to 3 month gap. I don't know if there's any documentation or something, from the state of how that thing can be something physical or tangible a kid might be able to take with them to show, because I don't believe we could issue a diploma until the state side of the thing is done, unless I'm
Not necessarily, Brandon.
Okay.
Ultimately, districts are making the decision on who has met graduation requirements, right?
Okay.
So it sounds like you probably should have a conversation with your district assessment coordinator, because a lot of what is in the Pathways database is a reflection of either data that's being entered into CEDARS or data share agreements with like SAT, SmartAbout, those kinds of things. Ultimately, the documentation for GRU, whether it is last year or this year, is kept at the local level. So again, it's really just about you all having, the district having documentation. So you may just want to, clear the deck and have bring in the district assessment coordinator to make sure that all the boxes are checked on your end, and then indicating that a student can graduate. And then the paperwork can catch up later on, right? When the GRU opens up for the pathways in EDS.
Perfect. No, that's exactly what I was needing to just make sure. I don't want to send kids down the wrong path. So no, that's extremely helpful. Thank you guys so much.
Absolutely. Okay. Still got 2 minutes. If anyone else still on the call wants to say a word or ask a question. Or go, run, get some water, get some caffeine. Take a few deep breaths before your next thing. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording because I think we're good.